Hi guys, I'm Inga. I am Girl Gone Bookish, and this is my channel. And if you've watched my channel at all, you know that I'm not the best at doing reviews. However, I feel like reviews are an important part of being a booktuber. I know not all booktubers do book reviews, and that's fine. You don't have to, but for me, I like to be able to talk about the books that I've read that I've enjoyed. So I was thinking, I'm not that good at book reviews. I don't know why I continue to do them. I like to talk about books though. So that's what I thought. I'm just going to do like a book talk and just talk about the books that I really enjoyed from the previous month or whenever I've read them that I feel like I should share with you all. So yeah, this is just going to be very casual, just my random thoughts and things on books. I'm going to try not to make them too long. But I'm going to choose books that I feel like I think are amazing books and I would like to share with people. And this is the best way that I knew how. And if you want a more structured, really, really good book review, there are plenty of other booktubers that do that. I know Lindsay Mead does amazing book reviews. Moro always does really good book reviews, and she just, the way she talks about books, she can talk about anything and it sounds really interesting, so I would check her out. And of course, the Readables, Priscilla, she always does really good book reviews, very structured, amazing book reviews. From all three of those guys. So if you want a really good book review, check them out. However, this is just going to be very casual, just me talking about a book. And I hope you like it, and I hope they don't get too boring or too long. So with all of that being said, I wanted to talk to you about this book. It's Rebecca. I cannot say this woman's name. I'm sorry. We're just going to call her Daphne. I loved this book. Several people on BookTube, booktubers, have said that they would like to read this book, and I strongly, strongly suggest it. It was probably one of the best books I've ever read. This is not YA. It's an adult novel. It's considered a modern classic. I think it's published in 1938. Just really, really good. The things I liked about this book is our main character is never mentioned by her first name. We only always hear her called Mrs. De Winter, and I forgot what she was called before she was married. But we first meet her in Monte Carlo when she's vacationing with the woman who employs her, and she's employed to be just a companion to this wealthy woman and to go on vacations and stuff like that with her, so she doesn't get lonely or bored. She's an older lady that Mrs. De Winter, but this is before she's married, so whatever she's called then. She's just kind of mortified by how she acts, how she's loud and kind of obnoxious. And while they're staying at this hotel, they meet Max De Winter, who later on becomes Mrs. De Winter's husband, obviously. But he's quite a bit older than her, and she's very, very shy. And she's always with this woman that she's paid to be friends with. And so finally, Max kind of takes notice of her and wants to talk to her and things, but she's sort of like treated as a servant to this other woman, so she's, not highly regarded. But Max really likes her and wants to get her alone, but he doesn't know how. Well, finally, her employer falls ill, I think with the flu or something. So she gets to go out with him, I think for like 2 weeks while she has a private nurse care for the other lady. And they fall in love. She falls in love. And they end up getting married after only knowing each other a short time. And I know that there's quite a big age difference, but I don't know if age is ever discussed in this book. But in the movie, I know he's like in his 50s and she's in her 20s, something like that. But, everyone talks about Max De Winter. He's very wealthy. He just lost his wife the previous year to a horrible accident. They assume that she drowned in the bay by their house, which is called Manderley. And, so yeah, I don't know. It starts off like that, and it's very romantic. And she's swept off her feet by this wealthy, handsome man who's just really interesting, who has this deceased wife, so she feels sorry for him. I don't know. It's just very romantic. It just sweeps you off your feet from the beginning. Once she gets to Manderley, she meets the head housekeeper, and the head housekeeper was very devoted to the first Mrs. De Winter, and she kept her room exactly how it was, and she makes the new Mrs. De Winter, our main character, feel very uncomfortable there, and she knows that something isn't quite right. And then a little mystery develops, and the dynamic between Mrs. Danvers, the head housekeeper, and Mrs. De Winter is just really strange. At first, Mrs. De Winter doesn't stand up to her. It's just weird, and you really, really get angry with Mrs. De Winter for not standing up for herself, but you also really dislike Mrs. Danvers. So through the whole thing, I kind of felt like there was something going on, like a little bit of a mystery that I wasn't sure about. I knew that the events surrounding the death of the first Mrs. De Winter was kind of questionable. I couldn't put my finger on it, and you almost have to read the entire book before you figure it out at the end. And it's shocking, and it's so good, and you just never expect it. I didn't expect it. Maybe I'm just naive. I don't know, and I just didn't believe it. But it was just such a good ending to this book. I definitely give this 5 stars and an A+. Like I said, it is not a YA book. It's considered a modern classic. So if you are into YA and not adult fiction, I don't know if this would be a good bridge kind of book. There's a lot of description. Sometimes there are pages and pages of her taking walks and her setting. And so I think that can be a little off-putting to some people, but I loved that. I love the description. It played like a movie in my head. I really, really enjoy that. So if you like books like that, then you should check this out. And like I said, it's considered a modern classic. God, that's like the 3rd time I said that. I'm sorry. But it is considered a modern classic. So it's not, I don't know, it's just very romantic, but it's just great. It's just a great book. I can't say enough wonderful things about it. So if it sounds interesting to you, check it out. I got this for like $14. So it's not terribly expensive, and the cover is pretty, I don't know, it's just really good. Very mysterious. It kind of reminded me of The 13th Tale. If you've read that one, that's kind of what it reminded me of. So that is the first book I wanted to talk about. So the second book that I really, really enjoyed in the month of January was 1000 White Women by Jem Fergus. I find that I am still talking about this book. I mentioned it in several videos. So it's the second book that I wanted to show you here on my little book talk segment, whatever we're going to call it. And this book literally made me cry. That's how good it was. So this book is based on an actual historic event, which you can Google and look all of that stuff up if you want to. But the basic idea of it is the Cheyenne Indians asked the U.S. government to trade with them 1,000 white women for 1,000 horses. And this is all going from the book, not the actual historic event. So at first the U.S. government said no, but then they said, you know what, let's do this, but we're going to get your women from asylums and prisons. So there you go. They agreed to send them 1,000 white women, and they started off with a small group to send to the Cheyenne Indian tribes to marry them and to have children by them. That was part of the deal. And I think if they couldn't have children or they had a baby after 2 years, they could go ahead and leave. And if they were in prison, as long as they lived with the Cheyenne Indians for 2 years, they would be free, or they would be free from the asylum, whatever the case may be. So this book introduces us to May Dodd. It's set in Chicago in 1875, I believe, and it begins her journey going to live with the Cheyenne Indians. And the reason she decides to go is because she's actually kept in an asylum. She was living with a man and had 2 children by him out of wedlock, which was just super scandalous back in the day, and her family is very unhappy with it. So they had her committed to an asylum. They had her put in an asylum for, I think they said, sexual perversion, and she talks about their torture that they put her through to cure her of her promiscuity, basically. So what she decides to go to the Cheyenne Indians to go ahead and get away from all of that. And it takes 2 weeks, I think. Her journey takes 2 weeks to get there, a week by train and then a week by horseback or something to get into where the Cheyenne Indians live. And it's just about her and the women that come with her. There are a set of twins that are Irish, and they're beautiful redheaded women that were in prison because I can't remember exactly what they did. I think they stole something, but they're gamblers. They cuss, they drink, it's great. There's one woman who decides to take this because she ran out of money. The place that she works was funding like a trip for her to study these wild birds and make a book about them. They ran out of money and she was kind of stranded there. So she was like, this is 2 weeks, 2 years for free that I can do this. And she already knew that she was sterile. She couldn't have children. And that didn't bother her. So she was just a crazy character. Every time the train stopped, she wanted to jump out and take pictures of birds. And she's always like, stretching over people to see out the window and stepping on people to get a better look at things. There's a black woman in here who's mentioned who said, her grandmother was a slave. She ran away from that, and came north. And even though she was free, she still worked for family and was treated as property and a slave. So she went into the wilderness to marry this man to be her own woman, and she really takes control, and to see the kind of woman she becomes is amazing. She becomes fierce and she becomes a fighter. It's beautiful how she lives out her life with these people. And then there's May Dodd, the woman our story is based around, in her journals, and it's just all about the trials that they go through living out in the wilderness with these men who, by all accounts, are considered less than human and savages. On her way there, she meets a man who's a general or a captain or something of the army, so there's a little bit of a love story there. But she decides to keep going, and he's engaged to someone else. And she decides to go ahead and not pursue that and go on into the wilderness as she sees him after he tells her she's not going to survive. You know, she can't do this. She sees him months later and she is surviving and she's doing really well. And she's changing the lives of not only herself, but the Indians around her. It's just a moving book. It's just this woman is so strong in this book. She does have a baby. A lot of the women have children. They're getting used to the customs of these men. Her husband, for example, is the chief of the Indian tribe, and he has like 3 wives, I think. And they all have babies, and they all live in one teepee together. She has to get used to that. She has to get used to even the food that they eat and where they get the food. And, you know, it's just really good. It's very interesting to see those things, but then to see how she develops as a person and how all the women around her change. It's just an amazing book. How many times have I said amazing? There's romance in it. There are things that are absolutely horrifying and will make you cry. There are things that will excite you and make you happy all at the same time. There's parts that will make you angry and want to kill the person, the character that's doing these awful things. So this book has everything in it, really. It's just so interesting and so... I don't know what the word is I'm looking for. I don't even think there is a word for how I feel about this book. But it's the first book that actually made me cry tears of sadness because of some things that happened. In the end, you find out what happens to May and how we got a hold of her journals. And what happens to her child and the children of the other women that come with her. And, you know, you find out everything, and it just ends really well. It ends on a good note, and it makes you feel good after it's all over. So this is my second book that I definitely recommend if you're going to read anything. Again, this is not a YA book. This is adult fiction. I'm not sure if this is a good bridge between YA and adult or not because there's a lot of description. It's a fairly long book, but it's really entertaining. It keeps you engrossed. So, you know, you might want to give it a try if you're kind of in between YA and adult. But it's really good. I give it 5 stars and an A+++. Definitely one of my top 10 of the year so far. So yeah. Anyway, guys, I hope this is a little bit better than just sitting down for a normal review. I hope this isn't too boring. But more importantly, I hope that you like the 2 books that I've talked about. As a matter of fact, I liked 1000 White Women by Jim Fergus so much I picked up his other book, The Wild Girl. This was also based on a historic event, which I don't know what it is, but I'm going to read this and let you know what I thought about it because I really liked his writing style. So, yeah, anyway, that's all I have to say. I hope you all are having a great week, and I will see you all later on. Bye.